There we go. Everybody sees how to pitch in an elevator. The idea behind an elevator pitch is that this is something that happens quickly without a lot of buildup, so that you can get in and get out and get people on your side quickly to go. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk about how to pitch in an elevator. If you want to, by the way, I am at Ryan Kuder on Twitter, and that is a really easy, low-cost way to get in touch with me. I will share information about Techstars. I'll share information about startups and what it's like to have 3 kids in college, high school, and elementary school, all homeschooling at the same time, plus the San Diego Padres. So I want everybody to walk away from here today with 2 key things, all right? So this is the first thing to remember, all right? 2 takeaways from today's session. Number 1, I want you to know what the 2 steps to a great pitch are. And number 2, I want you to remember this, ready? Blank, 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 super fire Mario, all right? 2 big takeaways. 2 steps to a great pitch and blank, 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 super fire Mario. At the end, there will be a quiz, and I want everybody to know those 2 things, blank, 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 super fire Mario, and the 2 steps to a great pitch. So we're going to start with the first one here. All right. There are 2 steps to a great pitch. Does anybody have an idea on what the 2 steps to a great pitch are? Go ahead and put them in the chat if you've got an idea of what the 2 steps to a great pitch are. Let's start with step number 1. Does anybody have an idea on what step number 1 is? Compelling a story, Yamila. That's close. Short. Short is good confidence. Dead goose, Fabian. I'm not sure what that means, but get attention, capturing attention. That's good. Stating the problem. Ludwig says having an idea. Okay, those are all good things. None of them are right. They're all important, but none of them are. Dead goose equals catch. Fabian, it worked. You said dead goose and you caught my attention right away. Here's the number 1, the first step to a great pitch. Already the suspense is killing you guys. Also, if it seems like I'm talking a lot, it's because it's a little awkward having you all out there, and I know that you're there, but I can't see any of you and none of you are interacting with me. So I make up for it with nervous banter. Step 1, okay? Build a great business. Step 1 is build a great business. The rest of your pitch is irrelevant unless you take care of step 1. All right, nothing else matters. If you skip step 1, and this is where most founders' pitches fall down, is that they skip the step where they build a great business. If you do step 1, step 2 becomes very, very easy. You just tell people about it, because everything that you need is already there. Everything else that you might hear from any other pitch workshop, including this one, is really just about how to tell people about it. But it doesn't make your pitch better unless you handle step 1. So the first objective that we had out of our 2 objectives today, right? The 2 steps to a great pitch and blank, 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 super fire Mario. The 2 steps to a great pitch are first, build a great business, and then tell people about it. So we're going to spend most of the day today focused on step 2. Okay, you guys ready? I'm going to start by giving you my elevator pitch for me. All right, so let's imagine that we just got into an elevator and you come to me and you're like, oh, so tell me a little bit about what you're doing here. And so I would say something like, oh, it's very nice to meet you. My name is Ryan Kuder, and I'm the managing director for Techstars Anywhere. I have run 6 Techstars accelerators, and as a result, I've invested in 54 early stage companies. I have met with thousands of founders, and I have seen thousands of applications, and I have heard tens of thousands of pitches. And so I've distilled a little bit from that about what goes into making a great pitch. So for founders who need to find investors, customers, or employees, I help craft compelling pitches so they can quickly get people excited about their business. If you've got anything that you want to learn about pitching, or if you ever want to just pitch me, let's follow up afterwards. Did I get in and out in 30 seconds? I might have been like 33 or 34, but it's pretty close, right? It was quick, it was short, it was to the point. I practice that a lot, right? Because I do this workshop, fairly regularly. I do it with my founders. I do it with founders at startup weeks around the country and around the world. And so I do this quite a bit. And so I spend a lot of time practicing. And hopefully what you saw was me knowing what it was that I was going to do. And one of the things that I think is really key is that most founders underinvest in practicing their pitch. And that's what I want to avoid. So I'm going to ask right now for 2 volunteers. Do I have 2 people who want to be able to come in and volunteer to give their pitches today? All right, Yamila, I'm going to guess Yamila is a yes, that she wants to volunteer.
If you're interested, click the button that's request audio video, and I'll bring you up on the screen for a bit.
All right, so let's get those first two, Yamila and Lena. Let's get the two of them in here. There we go. Looks like we got Lena in here.
And make sure that you grant access to your microphone and speaker.
Okay. All right, there's Lena. Lena, welcome. Thanks for being here at Vancouver Startup Week.
Thanks.
All right, and then we should have Yamila join in just a second.
Come on in. Hey, Lena.
Hey.
Good to see you.
Hey, Viv. Good to see you too.
Awesome. First of all, thank you both. Like jumping in front of like a huge, very engaged crowd that you can't see like this can be unnerving. And so I appreciate you guys coming to do this. Here's what I want to do. I've got some instructions for the audience first before you pitch. And then I'm going to have each of you give your 30-second pitch. Audience, here's what I want you to do. I want you to think of the questions that come up for you during Lena and Yamila's pitches. All right. After their 30-second pitch is over, I'm going to want you to write your questions into the chat. All right. Now, Yamila and Lena, don't answer them. All right. But what I do want you to do is I want you to note the questions, right? The answers to the questions are unimportant. The questions themselves are what we're looking for. Okay. So we're going to have each of you pitch. You're going to give your 30-second pitch. And then audience, you're going to be dropping the questions that you have for each of them into the chat. All right. So Lena, you are closest to me on the screen layout right now. I'm going to have you go first. So whenever you're ready, let's give your 30-second elevator pitch. Audience, questions into the chat. Are you ready? I've never done this on Hopin before, you guys. I have no idea if this is going to work or not. So let's give it a go together. Lena, you're up. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Lena Cesardich. So I'm working on hippokite.com. It's a tool that helps you log all your accomplishments and your achievements from work. So that next time you want to prepare for a performance review, it's an easy copy and paste, and you remember all the wonderful achievements that you've done over the last year. When I first got out of university and I started working, I kept a Word document on the side and wrote down everything that I did every couple of weeks. So whenever I did my performance review, it was just an easy copy and paste. I knew exactly where my values were, and I was able to deliver a great performance review while all my coworkers were just sitting around on a blank screen. So if you want to make use of your accomplishments, then sign up at hippokite.com.
Awesome. Thank you. That was about 50 seconds or so.
It was.
All right. It was about 50 seconds or so. Yep, I know. It goes fast.
Time flies.
Right. Questions into the chat, you guys. Questions on Lena. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right because I have a friend named Lena, and I think you said Lena.
That's right. Same thing. Lena's fine. Yeah.
Terrific. All right. Questions coming to the chat. All right. Let's see what we got here. We've got some product questions. Is it app or PC software? Can it accept voice inputs? How does the service remind the user? So we've got some product questions. We've got a question about where can I find your product? This is a distribution question. All right. Do you provide guidance for performance reviews? How do you make money? That's one. So we've got some product questions. We've got some distribution questions. All right. Who's using it now? That's a traction question, right? Like, is anybody using it? Do you have some betas or anything like that in here? So what I want you to do, Lena, is just kind of like take notes of these questions that you're getting. Because as you go through this process, what you're going to do is you're going to use these questions to figure out how to shape a more comprehensive pitch. Okay. How will it help me on my performance? That's a benefit question, right? That's a what do I get out of it or a why should I care kind of question. All right, achievements are far apart. Work harder, Mohammed. Get those achievements closer together. Daily goals. All right, awesome. Thanks for the questions, everybody. All right, so Lena, keep note of these, all right? But what we've got is we've got a lot of questions here on the product and what it is that the product does for you. We've got a little bit about the traction. We've got a little bit about the business model. And so like, I want you to just note those questions. All right, thank you very much. Yamila, you are up. All right, let's get Yamila's pitch. You ready?
Yeah, I'm gonna tell myself. Okay.
All right, let's go.
So hi, my name is Camila from Nyoka Design Labs. Now I want to ask you, raise your hand if you have ever used a glow stick before. Me too. Unfortunately, with over 500 million made annually, glow sticks mostly end up in the environment or in the landfill as non-recyclable waste. Take it a step further. What about all the plastic waste? But what if we could replace this with sustainable, scalable, and cost-effective solutions? Started with our first invention, we are creating technology following a circular economy model that removes or reduces waste while sequestering carbon along the way. And reduces plastic waste. Forgot that one. Sorry. Thank you.
All right,
Good.
there you go. 35 seconds. All right.
Good.
Timing was spot on. All right. Yamila, thank you very much. That was obviously one that you've done before or have written down. Yeah.
I started making it shorter because I pitched that one I took it as exercise of a 90-second pitch
Yep.
that I used in a competition, and I have the finals coming up in October.
Great.
And so I'm preparing another pitch for that.
All right. Well, let's go get into the questions. All right. Let's see what everybody had their questions for. Okay. Josh wants to know, what is the secret sauce that makes it innovative? All right. How does it work? There we go. Where can I learn more about the technology? What is your first product? Okay. Other questions? What is the name of your organization? That's a good one. Note that one. All right. A lot of people skip. You'd be amazed at how many people skip that part, right? Hey, my name is, my title is, and my company is, right? Like, so many people skip that. What are the applications beyond glow sticks? All right, any other questions? Everybody gets it, it appears. Or they're all just sitting there going, it's 8 o'clock in the morning and I need to make sure that my coffee gets refilled. That's another possibility too. Does it work in any weather? That's a good one. So a lot of product questions are in here. All right, Yamila and Lena, thank you so much for coming in here. When you both get back to your seats, you're already in them because that's the way this works now. Make sure that you've got your docs open because we're going to do some work on these in just a minute. Okay. So thanks for these questions. Here's what I want to point out. As we went through this process, there are questions that come up time and time again. All right. And before we even sat down today, I predicted those questions. All right. So these are the questions that people have a tendency to ask after this pitch. And we saw many of them come up today, right? We have questions about who's the customer. We have questions about the problem that's being solved. We have questions about the product. We got a lot of those in this particular instance, right? We got questions about why should I care, right? Like what's in it for me? Like why would I benefit from this? We got questions about traction, like who's using it and who are your customers so far? One of the things that didn't come in the chat that we usually get is like a why you question. And so if we go back to my elevator pitch that I've practiced a handful of times, right? We answered a lot of these questions in there, right? Who's the customer? It is for founders. And then it says, what's the problem that you're solving? Who need to craft a compelling pitch, right? What's the product? I give workshops, that's my product, so that you can get people on your side quickly. I talk about the traction and where I'm doing this, and then I do this around startup weeks and things like that, like around the world on a regular basis. And the why am I the best team answer for me was because of all of the pitches that I've seen through the work that I've done at Techstars. And so by running through and making sure that you're getting answers to these questions, like you can craft a pitch that takes care of 95% of the first set of questions that people will come up with, right? People will always come up with questions and you want them to do that. But what you want is you want them to come up with questions that are dig deeper questions, not clarify questions, right? So take care of the clarify questions and then get into the dig deeper questions. That's what we're going to work on today. So in order to do this, I'm going to share with you a framework for crafting a pitch, right? Now, it's important to understand what a framework is, right? It's not a do it this way, but it is a set of tools and building blocks that you can use to craft a pitch that works for you. And this is why I want your document to be open. We're going to get to the number one rule of pitching. I want you to write your pitch down. I want you to have it written down in a doc. I want you to apply version control to it. I want you to know what changes when. I want you to know what version of your pitch you are giving every time you get up and give your pitch. And the reason is because I want you to be able to control your variables, right? When you get in and you do a pitch, I want you to be able to know that this time I'm describing the problem this way, not that way. Does that create clarity? This time I'm talking about my credentials like this, not like that. Does it come off better? This time I'm talking about this particular bit of our product instead of that particular bit of our product. So that when people come back and they ask you questions, you'll know that those questions are because of this particular version of your pitch. And so I think it's important to open up a Google Doc, write your pitch down. And then some people will say, but doesn't it sound like I memorized it? Like there was a big difference in the way, in the tone between Yamila's pitch and Lena's pitch there, right? Lena had a pitch that she had memorized or was reading, and Lena had one that she was improvising. And there's a natural style that comes with improvising and a different kind of style that comes with memorizing. And here's how I want you to think about that. There's this guy who writes a blog called Wait But Why. It's like a big esoteric blog about AI and all kinds of stuff. But he gave a TED Talk. And he said it was one of the most amazing experiences of his life. And during his TED talk, he was struggling with finding the balance between this sounds like I've memorized it and I'm making things up as I go. And so his bit was happy birthday. Does everybody here know the song Happy Birthday? Right? Happy birthday to you, right? Every single one of us can sing that song without having to think about it, right? Like naturally. And we could do it at different paces. We could do it at different inflections. We could do it while we're tying our shoe or while we're measuring ingredients. And so one of the things that I want you to do with your pitch is to get so good at it that you don't practice until you can get it right, but you practice until you cannot get it wrong. And once you can't get it wrong, you can vary your inflection. You can add in pauses. You can speak more naturally. And so if you really, really know your pitch well, you can give it any time. You can't tell the difference between making it up on the fly and having it totally memorized. So remember, your key here is happy birthday level of memorization for your pitch so that you cannot get it wrong. All right, we're gonna jump into the framework, but first, when we talked about the first step to a great pitch. Now, the number one rule of a great pitch is different, right? This is when we're talking about part two, which is tell people about it. There's one thing above all else that will make your pitch stand out. Guesses into the chat. What do you guys think it is? The number one thing that will make your pitch stand out. This is awkward, you guys. There you go. Be relevant. Smile. Confidence is good. That's a bit. Connecting with the listener. That's good. Short and concise. Yes. Those are all good. All right. Does anybody remember something called Flickr? Flickr was a photo sharing app. Early 2000s. Yahoo bought it. Rip Yahoo. Anyways, Flickr, like if you don't remember Flickr had this metric, like all of us olds out here on the internet are going, oh yeah, Flickr was great. Everybody else is like, I don't know what that is. Flickr was awesome because like it did a really great job of finding pictures, and it had this metric that has stood out to me for my entire career. And the metric that Flickr assigned to a picture was called interestingness. And there was interestingness in each and every photo, and they based it off of the composition, the color, the location, the time of day, who the photographer is, how many people were in it. And it's kind of like this black box kind of thing where they take a look at the picture and they go, this picture is an 87 in interestingness. And you can take a look at a picture and you go, that's really interesting. The number one rule of pitching is be interesting. And interestingness is made up of a lot of things. It comes up with like a lot of the things that y'all put up in here, right? Susan says, shock. I would be cautious around shock because there's good shock and bad shock. Good shock, okay, which is more surprise and joy. Bad shock, like horror, is not as great. Short and concise makes it interesting. Connecting with the listener makes all of these things that you all are talking about in here are in the how I give my pitch. It's how I talk to people, how I connect with people, more than what I say, right? More than what I say, how I say it is the most important thing here, because if you're not interesting, they're going to go, and they're going to get out, right? And you don't want them to get out. What you want is you want them to lean in. And the number one way to get people to lean in is to be interesting. Not like, yes, have an interesting pitch, but it's for you yourself to be interesting, right? Be an interesting person, be a compelling person, be that person that they want to have a further conversation with, right? That's the number one rule of pitching, all right, is to be interesting. How do I do that, Ryan? Well, a lot of it comes down to practice, okay? So remember, that's the number one thing. The next thing that I want to talk about is I want to talk about what makes a great story, because there is, hold on, Ivan's asking a question. Do you think every pitch is crafted on the spot to the person you are listening to, as in interesting will change depending on who you are talking to? Yes, okay, Ivan, that is really great. Ivan, will you wait like 10 minutes and then in the chat, I want you to put this phrase. Are you ready? Story blocks. All right, like blocks that you like stack on each other like kids play with. So give me like 10 minutes and then put the phrase story blocks in there as a reminder. I might snooze that reminder, but we're going to come back to it. We're going to talk about story blocks. Thank you, Ivan. All right, so what makes a great story? Miss movies, like theater, like those are really great things. Thank you, Vancouver Startup Week. We don't do them anymore, but remember when we go to movies and we go to the theater, there are things that make up great stories, right? They've got compelling characters. There's some kind of conflict that goes on. There's a plot. There's like a thing that the characters do. And at the end, there's victory, right? Like, you're like almost every story, like think about like all of the great stories. There's characters, there's conflict, there's plot, there's victory. Sometimes victory is resolution. I'm going to go with victory just because it sounds more uplifting, right? So we're talking about like happy winning movies, not sad movies. Sad movies exist too, and they do have great stories. But characters, conflict, plot, and victory, these things all exist in like every great story ever told, and they will exist in your pitch as well, right? You have customers. Your customers have problems. There's a plot in terms of how you solve those problems for them. And there's victory, which means that now they can do something that they couldn't do before. And so what we're going to spend the next 15 minutes or so laying out is, what is a framework for us to tell stories about our company that have characters and conflict and plot and victory, so that we can create these really compelling stories. I've been sharing the hero's journey. This is a slight, this is a variant on the hero's journey, but yes, like that's a good thing to read. Like if you want to dig deep in, we've only got an hour here with you guys today, but if you want to dig deeper, like jump into hero's journey, because hero's journey is a really good way to think about how stories get crafted. All right, so I'm going to lay out four. I think it's four. It might be five. It depends on if I've got that last bullet in there or not. 4 things that tend to go into a pitch, right? And this is where Storyblocks is going to come back to later. 4 things that will tend to go into a pitch, okay? Number 1, introduce yourself. Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm the Managing Director of Techstars Anywhere. Number 2 is pitch, right? And this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today. Number 3 is stick the landing, all right? And number 4 is figure out what's next. So we're going to go into each of these 4 components that go into this framework, all right? Introduce yourself, make your pitch, stick the landing, and then talk about what's next, all right? So let's start with introduce yourself. Does anybody need me to go into this? Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm the Managing Director of Techstars Anywhere, right? Like super simple. Your name clearly stated so that they remember it. Company you're with and your role with that company, right? Hi, my name is Ryan. I'm Ryan. I'm the co-founder of Busy. All right, there's my introduction. I'm not going to spend any more time on here. Hopefully you get that. You would be amazed at how many people forget this part though. So in your doc, write down your introduction. All right, type that in there. Get that doc going. All right, next up we're going to go to is the pitch. This is we're going to spend the bulk of our time, because this is the bulk of what we're going to be talking about today. All right, this is where we're going to get into the framework for a pitch. All right, first of all, does anybody know who this guy is? It's Mario, right? Like if anybody play Isaac and Sunil, like I'm dating myself here because all of my references are like early 2000s, like 1990s. It's like everybody's going to know. Anyways, if you're not familiar with Mario, Mario is a plumber from the game Super Mario Brothers. He's got a brother named Luigi, but Luigi is somewhat irrelevant here. Mario is still a thing. All right, thank you, Ivan. I appreciate that. Mario has lots of businesses for those of us who are marketing or selling or telling a story about our products and our companies. Mario is this is, by the way, a great graphic from useronboard.com. So I want to give props up to useronboard.com because this product, this graphic like perfectly illustrates the point that I want to make here. You've got somebody who is a potential customer, right? This is Mario. Mario is a plumber. You have a product, all right? And in this case, your product is this flower. It's 12 inches tall. It's got yellow leaves up at the top, some green leaves at the bottom. And that is what you make. But what you sell and what Mario buys is not the flower. What Mario buys is the ability to grow to twice his natural size, to shoot fireballs, to run through obstacles, to have extra life, right? Like those are things he does so that he can finish the game and get to the end of the level, right? So you have a customer, right, who's very well defined, an 8-bit plumber, right, who has a problem. The problem is that Princess Peach has been kidnapped and Mario has to get past all of these obstacles to try to get her. And so we make a flower, right, this fire flower thing that Mario eats or picks, or I don't exactly know what he does with it. It's kind of ambiguous in the game. And when he does, he turns into this like amazing giant fire throwing Mario who's got all of this amazing power, which helps him solve the problem that he's got, right? And your business works the same way. I've got a customer, it's, you know, HR teams or HR leaders, and I've got a product, which is this SaaS software. But what they're not buying SaaS software from me, right? What they're buying from me is the ability to be able to track and understand sentiment for all of their employees about key messages that the company is putting out internally, right? That's what they're buying. So I want each of you to spend a minute and just think about your customer, what your product is, and then your super fire Mario, right? What is the superpower that you give your customers, all right? And that's what we're going to use to craft our pitch, okay? So our pitch takes this structure, right? So for some segment, right, who have some problem, we make something so they can super fire Mario, right? If you go back to the very beginning, we had two objectives, right? One was the 2 steps to a great pitch. And the second one was blank, 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 super fire Mario. For blank, who blank, we blank so they can super fire Mario. All right. That's the second thing that we want to walk away with today. So I want to talk about segmentation. Segmentation, I want you to get as granular as you possibly can. My friend Brant Cooper wrote a book called The Lean Entrepreneur. I don't know if anybody's read the Lean Entrepreneur, but one of the things that he talks, I was just looking at my bookshelf to see if I've got a copy of it handy. I don't. One of the things that he talks about in there is like how to get really specific in your segmentation, right? And to think about a segment as how do I define a group of people who share this particular problem, right? So he uses an example of a company called the Square Hat Company, right? His audience, or the segmentation on the Square Hat Company is not, you know, men ages 18 to 35. You know, it's not senior citizens. It's not millennials, right? It is people with square heads. They have a hard time finding hats. And so the way that I think about segmentation is that there is some defined group of people who share some problem, right? So when you do your pitch, you're talking about for a segment of the population, right, who have the same problem. And that's how you start off with your who. This talks about who your customers are and how you find them. And the more clear you can be about who your customers are, the more of the what you make so they can do Super Fire Mario is going to make sense, okay? So let's take a look at what an example of this might look like. For video game plumbers who are being attacked by Goombas, that's that guy. We make this crazy fire flower so they can be invincible and shoot fire and win the game, right? This structure works for almost any business. One question we get asked a lot is, I run a 2-sided or a multi-sided marketplace. Like, what do I do with that? You can do this twice, right? So for this particular segment who have this particular problem and this other segment who have this particular problem, we make a marketplace to hook them up so they can exchange goods and services or whatever it happens to be, right? So this is how this winds up working. So we can take a look at Mario. We can say for video game plumbers who are being attacked by Goombas or other monsters, or turtles, we make this crazy fire flower so that they can be invincible and shoot fire and win the game. All right. So here's what I want y'all to do. I want everybody to take just, let's go 3 minutes, all right? 3 minutes, I want you to think about your segmentation, who your customers are, what the problem is that they have, the product that you make, and the thing that you sell, your Super Fire Mario. And I want you to craft a sentence like this: for blank who blank, we blank, so they can Super Fire Mario into your Word doc, all right? So we're gonna take 3 minutes. I have no way of knowing if you guys are actually doing this, but I'm going to force you into 3 minutes of awkward silence anyways, so that you've got a couple of minutes to work on it. All right, here you go. 3 minutes of awkward silence starting now. I am not talking. I have stopped talking now. Really think about how do you get tight on that segmentation, right? How, like when you give your pitch, like I want you to have a person that people can imagine in their head feeling a pain point that you can feel right along with them. How do you get really specific there? When you think you've got it to a point where you're really specific, ask yourself, how do I create a subset of that? Really, really narrow that down. All right, take another 30 seconds or so and finish up. All right, first of all, Rodrigo just dropped a pitch into the chat that I think is really good, and so I'm going to shout it out here, right? So he says, for healthcare professionals who are underexposed and vulnerable at hospitals with COVID patients, right? So he does a good job of getting down to a particular healthcare professional, right? He's got a group of people, healthcare professionals, who share the same problem, right? They are exposed and vulnerable at hospitals with COVID patients, right? So at very particular hospitals with a very particular problem, right? They make a decontamination cabin, right? But people aren't buying decontamination cabins. What they're doing is they're buying the ability to get coronavirus free in 10 seconds. So Rodrigo, that's outstanding. Like you nailed that one. Like excellent work there. So this is the bulk of it right now. I'm going to come back to story blocks because somebody asked earlier about story blocks. It might have been Ivan, right? You can plug and play different components to your story depending on who it is that you're talking to. And a lot of times your story will have different context based on who it is that you're talking to. So for example, one of the first companies that ever went through Techstars Anywhere was a company called Keepsake. Keepsake is for new parents who want to capture the memories of their children. They make a text message based baby book that prompts parents questions and for photos on a daily basis so that parents can make sure that they store all the important memories that they've got with their kids, right? Now, that's a very different pitch if you're talking to somebody who's got young children versus if you're talking to somebody who like has never had kids, right? And so what you can do is you can come up with these little components, and I call them story blocks, that you can just pull one out, plug the next one in, right? Pull one out, plug the next one in. And it's always cool to be able to get context for your audience about who it is you're talking to. A lot of people start the pitch off with a question. Here's the important thing. Develop all of your story blocks in advance, right? So that you know what's swapping in and out. You know how to change it. You know how to talk about, if you're a two-sided marketplace, this side of the marketplace first or that side of the marketplace first, right? So you can come up with all these little components, get great at each of them. And then you can just move them around in ways that fit your story the best. So Ivan, the answer to your question is yes, your pitch will change depending on who it is that you're pitching to, all right? And each one of these can be a little story block that you can come in and out. All right. Next thing I want to talk to you about is I want to talk to you about sticking the landing. And I've been thinking about renaming this slide because I don't know that it actually captures what it is that I need it to capture, because it implies that it always comes at the end. It doesn't. And I'm going to explain to you why I call it stick the landing. Does anybody know who this is? This is Carrie Strug. And I have no idea if the audio is going to work here. So I'm going to talk over it a little bit. Let me turn my volume down. So Carrie Strug was a member of the '96 USA women's gymnastics team. And she's coming up. The vault is the last event in the team competition. And she's our last vaulter. And the US needs a particular score, a 9.8 or whatever like that from Carrie Strug in order to win the medal. She does that first vault, and when she lands, she hurts her ankle. So she's running here on an injured ankle right now, okay? And in order to win the gold, she's got to go again. She goes full speed. She hits the vault, flies up into there, does an amazing twisty thing, lands, and you can see when she lands, just like the pain shooting through her leg. She gets that foot up, She finishes her landing and collapses onto the mat. Her coach, Bella Caroli, comes, picks her up, like carries her off the mat, right? She gets like a 9.82, like just a little bit higher than they needed. And the USA women win the gold in gymnastics at the 1996 Olympics. And it was one of the, like, I get chills just thinking about it. One of the single most amazing moments in Olympic history is Carrie Strug sticking her landing on the vault for a gold medal. What does this have to do with my pitch? I have Carrie Strug's vault ingrained in my memory. Right? I will never forget it. How do you give a pitch that somebody will never forget? That is sticking the landing. And so whether you do this at the beginning or whether you do this at the end or wherever it goes is largely irrelevant. But there is something that takes your pitch and makes it memorable, right? It makes it that people will not forget you when you get out of the elevator. And there's a couple of things that I think go into this. Number one is being credible, right? Like there's something about you that makes you the right person, the best person in the world to be doing this thing, right? You can make it impressive, right? And so for a business pitch like we're talking about here, oftentimes this gets translated as traction, right? It could also be a new technology that we've developed. Like what's the thing about your business that is most impressive, right? And sometimes it's the case where there's nothing that's really impressive yet. We're still really early, like we're just an idea, but but we've got a great team that's put together. Like that's our credibility, and what we're doing is important, right? So be credible, make it impressive, and if it's not impressive, that's okay. Make it important, right? So if you remember back to my pitch for me, right? Like I used this period of time to say that I have run 6 Techstars accelerators. I've invested in 54 early stage companies, including a couple right here in Vancouver that y'all are going to meet later today. I have looked at thousands of Techstars applications, and I have heard thousands and thousands of pitches from founders, right? Hopefully that establishes a little bit of credibility about what puts me in a position to be able to talk about the things that I use to teach people about how to pitch, all right? So think about for your business, how do I establish my credibility and how do I make it impressive? And if it's not impressive, how do I make it important? Some examples of this, right? Impressive. We launched 3 months ago. We've got our first 10 paid pilots in place, and we're nearing $10,000 in monthly recurring revenue already, right? Or we launched a year ago. We've been steadily growing at a 20% month-over-month clip, and we've got over 1 million free users signed up on our platform already. So, so think about how do I do this? Because your goal here is stick the landing. And like I said, I don't care if you stick the landing at the beginning of your pitch or at the end of your pitch. You can move these blocks around into a way that works best for you. So that's what I want you to remember though, is like, what's the thing that goes like, oh wow, like this person, like she can do this. Like this is real. All right. And then lastly, what's next? There's a concept at Techstars that is really important for us, and that's this idea of give first. And the idea behind giving first is that if you freely give of yourself to others, you will receive in return payback that far outweighs anything that you could have if you tried to negotiate an outcome on your own, right? And so it's one of the reasons why we love doing things like this. We love coming out and sharing the things that we've learned with founders. You know, Isaac's going to do the same thing. We've got Techstars founders are coming in and really volunteering, and all the speakers that are here this week, like coming in and like volunteering to come out and talk with y'all, right? Because we believe that if you give first, you will get more than you ever anticipated. And so the first thing that I want you to think about when you're thinking about what's next is not, can I pitch you? Or can I pick your brain? Never say, can I pick your brain? Some people get their brains picked a lot and it's unpleasant. But really think about like, how can I help you? And this is a hard skill, right? Because there's a balance between imposing and helping, right? Like, and being kind of like, oh, hey, I'd like to get 15 minutes to tell you about my company. That would help you because you're looking for great companies to invest in. Doesn't always work. But like, let's say that you're a SaaS company and you're talking to a SaaS investor, and you can say something like, oh, you know, we did a white paper on, you know, this particular segment that we work on. You know, would you be cool if I shared it with you after we got back here? Great, let me have your email address and I'll send it to you when we get home, right? But how do you find a way to come up with next steps that is you helping them, all right? And sometimes that'll be hard. And sometimes like they're the ones that can help you. And so in that case, you figure that out. But there is some way to close this out. So if you remember back to my pitch for me at the very beginning, the way that we closed this out was, you know, if you think that I might be able to be helpful, teach you a little bit more about how to pitch, hit me up afterwards. All right. We're going through all this, right? So how do you be helpful to the person that you're talking to? All right. Give first. Always remember, give first. All right. I'm checking the chat real quick, just to see if we've got some. All right. MarsView.ai. I wonder if Sophia is the founder of MarsView.ai. That would be clever, wouldn't it? All right. So, all right, let's go on here because we are approaching the end. Here's the last thing that I want to talk about. And this is the concept of making it yours, right? What we've worked on today is laying out a framework, and it's got different bits and components that go together. And you can take these components and move them around. You do not have to use the language that we talked about, but I want you to use the concepts that we talked about, right? I want you to make sure that you introduce yourself, right? Hi, I'm Ryan. I want you to give your pitch, right? For blank who blank, we blank so they can blank. And you might do it like, we make a blank for blank who blank so they can blank. Or you might be like, some people who blank need to blank, so we make a blank, right? Run these things around, right? Like you can fix this stuff up however you want, however makes the most sense for you. Like take creative liberties with this framework to make sure that you're saying the things that you want to say. Move these story blocks around and stack them in ways that make the most sense for you, right? Then stick your landing, right? Establish your credibility. Make this memorable in some way. Come up with next steps. Focus on give first. How do I help you, right? Not how do you help me, but how do I help you? And then lastly, the number one most important thing about this pitch is to make it interesting, right? Lean in, get people leaning into you, be engaging, make them want to talk to you afterwards, all right? And that kind of wraps up our pitch workshop for today. So here's what I want everybody to have walking out of here. I want each of you to have a Google Doc. I want that Google Doc to have at least the scaffolding for a 30-second pitch, right? And I want you to write down your pitch. I want you to write it down, okay? Actually, let's do this right now. We got 11 minutes left. I want everybody to take 2 or 3 minutes if you haven't done it yet. And if you have done it, awesome, good on you. Let's write it down. And I would love to get a, Susan, we already talked about story blocks, but thank you for the reminder. I appreciate you guys staying on top of things for me. I want somebody to come up and read. I want it to be read, right? I don't want you to make it up. I want it to be read, their pitch. So here's how we're going to close it off. We're gonna take 3 minutes just for people to kind of like final typings. And I want somebody who thinks that they have got a really great pitch that's got a good introduction, a good pitch that's structured for blank who blank, we blank so they can blank, an impressive or important landing with credibility, and a call to action that is give first. So let's take 3 minutes, and then I'm gonna ask for a volunteer. Is there anybody who thinks they've got it nailed?
Jazz does.
Who does?
Jazz Sahoda.
Jazz?
Should I let him
Oh,
in?
Jazz lined up to come in, huh?
He's brave enough. Do you want me to let him in and tell him to give it a shot?
Yeah, let's give it a shot, Jazz. Oh, I see what's happening. They can just volunteer. I don't need to we don't need to do anything. I just Sweet. All right.
Yeah. And then
Jazz.
he'll pop up. Assuming he didn't change his mind.
Yeah, real quick while Jazz is doing this, Lawrence asks an example of how a company in an early stage can offer to help to the advisors that they're approaching. Lawrence is describing something that is super common, and that's this idea of a power imbalance, right? Where you've got somebody, your advisor, who's like, a big important person in your industry, and me, who's a startup founder, who's a small, like soon to be important person in my industry. And so how do I create value for them, right? A lot of this goes down to your credibility, right? And how do you become a credible person that's in their space? And so one of the things you could give is you could give a I'm still working on growing this company right up, and I know that you've done this a lot, and I've been thinking a lot about this space. And what I'd love to do is I would love to come and talk to you about how it is that I've been thinking about this space and how I'm using that to inform the way that I'm building my product. I think it could be useful for you, just kind of like hear how I'm thinking about it as a founder. And I know that it'd be useful for me to understand how you would be thinking about it as an advisor, right? And so one of the key things here, you guys, you need to be confident in the fact that you're doing this for a reason and that there is nobody better in the world to do this than you, right? And if you wake up in the morning and you go, I'm hesitant, there might not be anybody, there's probably a lot of people better in the world for me. Figure out, how do I become best in the world? Who do I read? Who do I follow? Who do I talk to? What kinds of conversations do I have to become world class? Right? So just something to give to everybody, regardless of what the perceived power imbalance might be. Also, don't be afraid to ask for favors, right?
Asking you to join us every single year. It's me asking.
No, you're doing me a favor there, right? You're doing me a favor because I have so much fun. All right, did we lose Jazz? Did Jazz not come? Jazz backed out. Anybody else want to share their written pitch? Here's what I'd like. I'd like for you to actually read it, right? I want somebody to read it. And I want you to start with your introduction, then your pitch. We might not get any volunteers here. That's okay.
If someone does want to volunteer, ask to request for audio and video, and I will approve it, and you can come up on the screen with us.
And if nobody wants to volunteer,
there he is.
There we go. We got Jazz. All right, Jazz, thanks for doing this. All right, let's start with all of the components, right? Let's start with your introduction of yourself, your for blank, who blank, we blank, so they can blank. Stick your landing, and then call next steps. Okay. All right.
Hi, I'm Jao Sahuda. We have a product for caring teachers who want to better integrate technology into their classrooms teaching, but are overwhelmed by all of the products out there. And we've got a solution, a cloud-based solution that can help them to become more effective teachers.
All right, Jazz, you got like 60% of that. All right, here's a couple things. Number one, in the introduction, don't forget to tell us the name of your company. All right. If your company doesn't currently have a name, because a lot of early stage people are working on things that don't have names yet, you can say that too. But like, that's one of the things that people are going to remember. And that's one of the ways that they're going to find you afterwards. Right now, they're going to go, his name was Jazz something, and I don't remember the name of his company because you didn't tell us. So get your introduction, nail your introduction, right? Okay. Thing two is you've got caring teachers, but here's my question. Are you talking about college professors? Are you talking about K-12 teachers? Are you talking about preschool teachers? Are you talking about teachers who teach individual side classes at night on online platforms? Like, you can do a really good job of telling us who these are, right? Are these for K-12 teachers at underfunded public schools? Right? Like, that gives us a good sense of who we're talking about, right? So make sure that you get that segmentation really down here. When you talked about what it is that you make, we know it's a SaaS platform, but we have no idea what it does. Does it integrate other tools? Is it a learning management system? Is it like, how do we get an image of what it is in our head? Like, if we go back to the Super Fire Mario thing, like, we make this crazy fire flower. It's this tall. It's got yellow things on the top and green leaves on the, but like, I want people to be able to really get a sense of like, oh, okay, I see what they're making now, right? Are you making tools that manage things on the back end? Are you making tools that are customer facing on the front end? And by customer facing, we're talking students. Are these softwares for students, for teachers? So as you go through this, what I want you to do is get the feedback from people based on the questions that they ask you. The next step, right, is sticking the landing. I don't know if you've been a teacher your entire life, right? Have you been a teacher your entire life?
No.
School administrator? A parent with kids who have struggled going through school?
Parent right? With kids that went through COVID.
Yeah. And so therefore, and then have you been building software like for a long time? Like, there's a lot of things that are probably interesting about you that will help establish the credibility, right? Like, I've been a software engineer for the last 25 years, and my kids have recently gone through online schooling with COVID, right? And I have seen the ways that they struggle and have had conversations with their teachers to understand why this is so hard, right? There's some credibility right there, right? You probably don't, do you have like a whole bunch of people on the software platform already?
Not yet, no.
Okay, so impressive is low, right? But important is high, right? Because today, like most kids in the United States and Canada are doing at least some or part of their schooling from home with tools that are poorly equipped to be able to handle this.
Thank you. Great
So,
feedback.
yeah, so those are the types of things. Remember, like just get in there and this is why it's so important to write it down, right? If Jazz hadn't written that down, he wouldn't know where the feedback that I was giving was applicable to. Right? If you just made that up on the fly. So write your stuff down so that when you get feedback like that, when you have somebody like Viv or, you know, any other like, you know, founders or whoever, when you've got those people that go in and say like, oh, hey, I'll give you some feedback. Like, you know where to put that feedback. You know what it applies to. You know the version of your pitch that they're giving you that feedback on. So Jazz, thanks a lot for letting me deconstruct that with you. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you very much.
All right. You guys, okay, do we have time for one more? Can we do one more, Viv? It's 8:57. Basically, we're done right now. So all we're doing is just kind of, oh, look at that. Now everybody wants it. We're going to go with Jessica because she was there first. So let's see what Jessica's got. Jessica, feel free to read this, okay?
Okay. Hello.
Hello, Jessica. Welcome.
Thank you. So my name is Jessica Bosman, and I am the co-founder of Double. Double is for women who feel discomfort in their daily lives due to ill-fitting bras. We create custom-fit bras through 3D image technology to offer the perfect fit and allow women to focus on reaching for opportunity to create a more equitable world.
Questions in the chat? How'd you do? So Jessica, you nailed all the bullet points. Like here's my question for you. Like, did it feel natural the way that you talked about it?
I think like fairly, if I practice it a few more times, probably.
So that's one of the key things to do is to practice a few more times. Here's the other thing is the stick the landing is oftentimes the harder part, right? Like, is there something about, are you a clothing designer? Are you a doctor? Like, is there something about you that makes you like perfectly suited for doing this? Like, is there something credible about you and or your team that makes you do this? Is there traction? Have you sold a certain amount so far? Have you helped a certain number of women? Like, what is the thing that kind of creates that sense of like, oh, wow, this is like a real thing? Like, one of the things about early stage startups, and you guys will run into this a lot over here, is that there's a big leap that goes from being a project to being a business, right? And so one of the things that you want to do is like establish the fact that this is a real thing, right? I'm making money with this. I'm building this. I'm shipping this product. I've got prototypes that are out there that we've got, you know, a 97 NPS score for so far, right? Out of our first, you know, our first 10 customers all referred us to another 10 customers within 2 weeks, right? Like those types of things. And so really, and something like sometimes it's people who are on a waiting list. There's like all kinds of things that could create that. So think about how do you stick the landing on this pitch by establishing credibility, impressiveness, and importance.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think that you nailed the pitch part of it really, really well. Nice work, Jessica.
Thank you so much.